Hi, I'm John DeVore. Welcome to the channel. Today's an unboxing video, but it is a little different from the usual unboxing video in that, number one, I'm John DeVore's hands, and I will be narrating this video because there's some interesting stuff in here. Part of it will be a little bit of a walkthrough preview of what I'm going to show at what DeVore Fidelity is going to show at the Munich high-end audio show coming up in May, Munich, Germany. Relating to that, so what's in here is going to be used at that hi-fi show. It was sent to me by the manufacturer of what's in here from Switzerland. So the objects in here will be used at the show. They were sent to me so that I could burn them in and also kind of get used to them. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about all that various stuff. So let's unbox it. So I'm going to use, I got a comment, one of the unboxing videos, a couple of the unboxing videos have commented on my unsafe knife skills. And, you know, there's some merit to those comments, I will admit. Partly, you know, sometimes it's because the blade is so dull. One guy mentioned that I couldn't afford a box knife with a retractable blade. I love the Stanley 199 is a classic. It's works beautifully, and it is a classic. It feels great in the hand. The high relief texture of the text feels great. Another thing about the 199 is that because it's not a retractable blade, the blade is not loose. It's really solidly mounted in there, and I prefer that. I certainly can afford retractable blade knives, and I have tons of the classic Stanley 99s for the factory, which have the classic retractable blade. But the retractable blades, they rattle, they shake, they're not really, they're just not as pleasant to use. Anyway, that's why I use the 199. And I will try to be careful. Thank you. I do appreciate your concern. No question about that. I do appreciate your concern. Anyway, let's get this thing open. You can tell it's an audiophile company because they use acoustic foam for packaging. Oh, look at that. So nice. All right, so for those of you who haven't guessed, these are the two phono cartridges that I'm going to be using in the demo room in Munich. They came from EMT, a company that has a very long and really impressive track record with analog. Really, they just fantastic stuff. They've always made incredible cartridges. They are famous for a couple of really respected turntables back in the day, idler turntables. They made some direct drive and belt drives as well, but mostly they're idler. The 927 and 930 turntables are quite sought after. And I love EMT cartridges. I also love I have the EMT preamp as well, which is really a very phono-centric preamp with 4 phono inputs and 2 line inputs. Priorities are where they should be, in my opinion. So the 2 cartridges here, I'm gonna just put these little, oh, look at that, you can see them on the bottom. Very pretty. Very pretty. So we have a blue one and a red one. Look at that. Oh, lovely. I will be opening these up, don't worry. And look at that, there's a blue one. Oh boy, these are lovely. So why EMT? Why 2? Those are great questions, John. For those of you who have seen my rooms in hi-fi shows, I like to, my preference is to demonstrate the system generally with vinyl, with analog. And this year I happened to team up with a manufacturer of turntables and tone arms, and they were happy to bring 2 setups, 2 turntables with separate tone arms. And this will allow me to do one of my favorite things, and that is to play mono. So I'm going to have one turntable set up for stereo playback, and that will be with the red cartridge. And I will have one turntable set up with mono playback, and that'll be with the blue pill, the blue cartridge. Why did I choose these 2? I have not actually heard either of these cartridges. This is an HSD 006 stereo cartridge, the red one, and the blue one is an HMD 025. So the 006 refers to, I believe, the stylus. The 25, definitely, it's a 25 micron stylus for mono, which is not, that's a big rock at the end there, but that is typical for mono. Generally speaking, if it's not for 78s, a mono cartridge will either have a spherical 25 micron diamond or a spherical 15 micron diamond. The reason I chose these 2 is because I'm fairly familiar with them. Or rather, I am very familiar with their ancestors. If there's one thing that really stresses me out and I really don't like to do, that is to show up at a hi-fi show, which tends to be a very high-stress situation anyway, and not know anything about the gear that I'm going to be demonstrating my speakers with. Whether that's the sound characteristics of the cartridge, whether that is the compatibility of an amplifier with a pair of speakers, whether it's the sound of the cables, it tends to be stressful. Already trying to get good sound in those pretty horrible rooms, whether it's a hotel room or whether it's a sound cabin like it will be in the Munich show. Already that is a huge challenge. Those rooms are horrible sounding. So it's a huge challenge to get good sound in one of those spaces. If you add to the mix an unknown cartridge or an unknown tone arm that is giving me problems and I really don't know how to deal with it, it's just, I don't want that to be in there. So, why did I choose these 2? So look at that, I don't have to cut it. It's already fairly loose. No, it's not. So I'm just gonna open this up. Just gonna cut the seal here. I'm not sure how the packaging works in here. It is similar, there we go. So it's in its own little pillbox. Oh, that's not going to come out, is it? Maybe it's not. Wow, that foam is a tight fit, and that's all it is in there. It's just pressure fit. Okay, we are open. So there is the stereo cartridge. Just going to put this stuff to the side. Nice mounting screws. Let's get, you know what? Yeah, let's get the stereo one. Let's get the mono one out as well. Oh, much easier. Okay. So, as I said, I am quite familiar with the ancestors of these 2. This, you know what, I'm sorry, but this really does look like the blue pill and the red pill. These look like, they look like little pill containers. It's funny, but they really do. And there you can see their logo, their names, HSD and HMD, S stereo, M mono. 3 reflective. There we go. Anyway, so as I was saying, I'm very familiar with the ancestors of these two cartridges. The ancestor to the stereo cartridge here is a truly legendary cartridge, and that is the TSD-15. The EMT TSD-15 is, in my opinion, one of the greatest all-time hi-fi cartridges. I've used it for years and years and years and years, and I have it. So the way the TSD-15 originally came out is in what some people call, I guess EMT calls this a tonedose, tonedose. Oh boy, I do not know if I'm pronouncing that right. Some people call them a pickup head. The most famous pickup head tends to be the Ortofon SPU. This is the TSD-15 in a tonedose, in a pickup head setup. This one is a gold hammer tone because it was released to celebrate the 70th, I believe, 70th anniversary of EMT. And the 2 circles there, that is stereo. Those are the 2 channels, I reckon. So the motor mechanism in here is so good. So everything about it, it's not just the motor mechanism, but the stylus, the way this whole thing works. It's such a good design that for many years, there were a lot of cartridge manufacturers, high-end cartridge manufacturers, that used the EMT TSD-15 as their cartridge, with, generally speaking, with pretty minor changes. Vandenhull did it, Brinkmann did it, Roxanne did it. And one of the ways you could tell with a lot of them, so what they would do is they would essentially take the cartridge out of this head shell apparatus, or they would have it made for them by EMT without the head shell, and instead with the standard 2 screw mount. The problem with that is that it almost always had this white plastic front piece here, because it is integral into some of the mechanics of the cartridge, and it has a little stylus protector there. You can see those 2 little white arms flanking the stylus, and it's nice. It's a nice way to protect it from getting swiped from the side or something like that. And so the Vandenhull and the Brinkmanns still had that, and when you don't have it in the head shell case, it sort of looks like a big white snowplow on the front, on the face of the cartridge. It just looks kind of odd. The Roxanne, actually, Tourage he made his own casing, which incorporated that little stylus guard out of aluminum, and I think his version was called the Roxanne Shiraz, and it was a beautiful version of it. Over the years, and this is a cartridge that EMT has made for decades and decades and decades, and the spherical version of this cartridge, which has the 15 micron spherical stylus, the TSD-15 spherical, is essentially, as far as I know, it's the same as it would have been if you had bought it when it first came out, which has got to be at least 50 years ago. It's a really impressive track record. And I've used it I've used it at many shows, but you may be asking yourself, why do cartridges come in these chunky head shell units? And why do you tend not to see these anymore? And why do you see them shaped more like this with 2 mounting screws on the top? Well, it used to be that all cartridges looked like this to some extent. The cartridges themselves mount on the end of a tone arm. There you can see the 4 contacts. There's positive and negative for left and right. So that's 4 contacts. And those contacts make connection in the at the end of the arm tube, and then it has a really nice positive tight locking mechanism on there. Any DJ is quite familiar with that mechanism, because DJ turntables will pretty much all, the Technics 1200, really classic turntables, they will all have those removable head shell styles in order to really make it easy and quick to swap out a damaged cartridge. One of the other things that's really nice about using a setup like this is that the geometry of these pickup units is always the same. The distance between where that stylus is and where the tone arm mounts is always exactly the same. So you can adjust your tone arm for one of these units and swap in another one really easily without having to readjust your tone arm. And so if you have a stereo cartridge like that TSD-15, and then maybe you have a mono cartridge, this OFD-25 with a 25 micron stylus for playing mono records, and then maybe you like 78s, and so maybe you need an OFD-65 with a big 65 micron stylus on the end there, specifically for tracking 78s, the shellac. It's almost like cheating. If you're used to the modern style tone arm and cartridge setup, this is almost like cheating. It's so easy. So once upon a time, all cartridges were like this. If I show you with one of the oldest cartridges I have here, this is also for 78s. This is an Ortophon C, Type C. The Ortophon Type C predates the classic SPU, and it is for 78s. It is mono, and thus it only has 2 contacts, positive and negative, for 1 channel only. And yet it is the same geometry. The stylus there is the same distance from the arm mount as it is on the TSD-15. So again, these are all compatible. Here's another. That Ortophon, that body is made out of bakelite instead of magnesium like the modern EMTs were. And this is an older EMT that also has a bakelite head shell. And this is a 25 micron, again, the same geometry. And here's one with a 15 micron mono for playing some newer mono records that have a slightly narrower groove. Most people who play mono records play them with a stereo cartridge, and it plays a mono record beautifully. There's no problem playing a mono record with a stereo cartridge. So why would you want a specialized cartridge to play mono records when your stereo cartridge will play it just fine? The difference really is in the way that it tracks the groove and the way that it generates the signal from that tracking. So the records themselves are cut quite differently. The original mono microgroove records were cut in a similar way to 78s. The groove that the stylus is tracing on a mono microgroove record is only modulated in one way, because it only has to do one channel. And so that stylus is basically just going back and forth as it traces the groove on the record. And so the stylus and its suspension are optimized for travel in just that one direction, and the motor itself is simplified because it doesn't have to decode or dematrix the stereo signal that's encoded on a stereo disc. it just tends to sound a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more bold. The stylus feels to me like it's picking up more information. It's filling that groove a little bit more perfectly. A stereo cartridge is tracing a groove in a similar way, but a stereo groove is modulated in different directions. So one channel of the stereo is modulated in this diagonal, and the other channel of the stereo is modulated in the groove in a 90-degree opposite diagonal. And so the stylus has to be able to accurately move in all those different directions, and then the motor itself inside there is arranged in such a way that it is able to extract the information from all of that information that's coming out of the stylus. So it's a rather more complicated process, and a cartridge that is optimized to do that well is not, in my opinion, and in the opinion of some people, is not going to do that old school, simpler little groove dance quite as well. And so what I have here, because the turntable and tone arm maker that I am exhibiting with does not make a tone arm that you can mount one of this style cartridge in, I got essentially, this is the closest thing to my OMD 25 that you can get in the world, and it does behave quite a bit like an OMD 25, even though it's mounted in what looks like a very modern body. And this is the closest thing you can now currently get to a TSD 15, but mounted in a modern body enclosure. This is a super fine line version of the TSD 15, which is referring to the shape of the diamond, the shape of the stylus on the end. The classic TSD 15, as I mentioned before, had a spherical diamond. So that essentially means it is a round profile cone, conical. A super fine line is not that way. It is actually, the diamond is a flattened out. It's much more of an oval. It has a much finer edge on the two sides, and that is to trace in the groove and be able to pick up even finer modulations in the sides of those grooves. My TSD 15 actually is also a super fine line. For me, it's a perfect balance between the classic TSD 15 sound and a more modern, more detailed sounding cartridge. And the mono, as it says, HMD 025, is a classic 25 micron conical or spherical stylus, which is ideal for playing those mono records. So anyone who comes to see me in May in Munich, I will be playing mono records, I will be playing stereo records, but in the meantime, EMT sent me these two brand new cartridges so that I can burn them in. So the next thing I'm going to do, probably tomorrow, is I'm going to mount these two cartridges on my turntable, and in the future, any upcoming record reviews I do, you will recognize. You will probably, your sharp-eyed among you will recognize the red pill and the blue pill taking turns as they burn in my rig. And as I sort of get used to the sound, as I pick my records for the show to bring to Germany. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to hear these guys. They're really wonderful little things. Thank you so much to Misha of EMT for sending me these. I know Misha and I tried to connect in our demo room last year in Munich, but because of shipping logistic nightmares and everything like that, I didn't have my gear there until the evening before the show was open to the public, and so we never were able to get the beautiful EMT cartridge set up with the beautiful tone arm and turntable that he provided. So hopefully this year, since I have these with me, they will. We're not going to have any problems, and I'm going to be playing records for the whole show. So if you are going to be at the Munich show, come and see us. I will certainly talk a little bit about where we're going to be and what else is going to be there, but I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a run through some cartridge history with me. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next video. Bye.